Hi, I'm Jeff Davis, and this is a What's New in Anthos video brought to you by ROI Training. We're going to take a look at the newly available option to deploy Cloud Run on Anthos onto Anthos clusters running in AWS. Let's switch over to the demo environment and see how it works. Okay, so to install Cloud Run on Anthos clusters running in AWS, you have to have a couple things in place. First thing that you need is an AWS Anthos cluster. So you can see I've got a couple here. The one that we're going to be working with is the demo cluster. If I click on this, you can see that I've got 4 worker nodes comprising 8 CPUs. And if I click on the link that takes me to the Google Kubernetes Engine console, I can see that I've got a variety of workloads deployed onto this cluster. Let's actually look specifically at the demo cluster. And a couple of these workloads are specific to the second thing that you have to have in place, which is you have to install Anthos Service Mesh on your Anthos cluster on AWS. So you can see that I've got Istio-D running and I've got an Istio Ingress Gateway deployed. So with those in place, we're ready to begin the Cloud Run installation. I'm looking at the online documentation, and you'll notice that I'm looking at installing outside of Google Cloud, and I've chosen Preview Installation. The VMware installation, so this is Anthos clusters on VMware, that is generally available. Doing this installation on AWS or Azure or bare metal is currently in preview. So what we're going to do is scroll down and see that the first step is to make sure that I have a service account that can be used by the cluster to write metrics back into Google Cloud, and that service account has the appropriate permissions in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a search on IAM, and we'll look at the permissions, and we should see that there is in fact a service account for our purposes. Okay, so we've got Anthos AWS monitoring, and it has the monitoring metric writer role, which is perfect. So the next thing that we need to do is make sure that cloud monitoring is enabled for the Anthos cluster on AWS. If you click here, it'll take you to a page with a command that you need to run. This creates another role assignment for a different service account that allows the cluster to write telemetry back into Google Cloud. So if we go and scroll down here, you can see that I already have this Anthos multi-cloud telemetry writer role assigned to the appropriate service account. So those are ready to go. The next thing that we need to do is we need to actually create a namespace where our Knative or Cloud Run resources are going to live on our cluster. So we can just copy this, go over here. Let me make sure that I'm in the right context. I'm going to do that. Okay. And we're going to create the namespace. Once we've done this, I should be able to see that the namespace exists on my cluster. So there we go. That's what we want. Okay, once that's in place, then what we need to do is we need to create a Kubernetes secret. And this secret is going to be called metrics, and it's going to contain the service account key file so that processes running in this namespace can use the key file in order to make API calls back to Google Cloud, specifically to write metrics. Now, you could do this with workload identity, but the instructions for this demo have us using it via a service account. So I'm going to go ahead and create the secret. And again, if we do k get secrets -n knative serving, we should see that there is a secret here called metrics, which we want. You could also see this by looking in the Kubernetes Engine Management UI. And if we look for secrets here on the demo cluster, we should see on page 2 that there is a metrics secret in place. Okay, so we've got the namespace created, we've got our secret created. The next thing that we need to do is create a configuration file that will define the Cloud Run object in our control plane. We're going to specify a project identifier, a zone, a cluster. I need to modify this to be demo cluster. the secret name, and so forth. So what I'm going to do is create a text file, actually a YAML file that has this. So I'm going to do nano cr.yaml, and I'll just paste the contents in and save it. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that the Cloud Run feature is enabled in the Anthos hub for our fleet of Anthos clusters. And they give you the command line to do that, and we're just going to paste that in. This will make sure that the feature is turned on. And if I go back to the Google Cloud Console, if I go to the Anthos dashboard and I look at features, I should see that Cloud Run for Anthos is enabled. And if I click details, you'll notice the AWS cluster has already got this set up, but the demo cluster does not currently have this set up. So the next step is to configure this on the demo cluster. So you can use a kube control command, or you can use a gcloud command. And we're going to do gcloud container hub cloud run apply, and we're just applying the configuration file that we created. And again, I need to make sure that I'm using the right context, okay, and the right configuration file. So this was called cr.yaml. So I'm going to copy this, go over here, paste it in, and this should apply that configuration file. Thus, it creates a Cloud Run object, which is an object based on a custom resource definition. If I scroll over to here now and do a refresh, let's look at my clusters. If I go to the demo cluster, we should see that Cloud Run for Anthos is now enabled. So to use Cloud Run for Anthos on this demo cluster, I'm going to go to the Cloud Run for Anthos graphic interface, and I'm going to choose to create a new service. When you create a new service, you can choose which cluster you want to deploy to. Now you'll notice that the previous cluster, the AWS cluster, is set up and ready to go. The demo cluster is still waiting. It takes a little bit of time for the metrics collector to spin up and start reporting results to Google Cloud, and you can't choose the cluster till that's done. So we're going to pause here, then we're going to jump forward until the cluster is available to select, and then we'll go ahead and create our service. All right, the demo cluster is now available, so I'm going to select the demo cluster. I'm going to go ahead and deploy this service into the default namespace just for convenience sake. And we're going to name this demo. And then I'm going to just select a very simple Hello World application that's available as a container image that Google's built. I'm going to select that. And we're going to actually expose this Cloud Run service to clients outside of the cluster and clients outside of the VPC network where the cluster exists. So this will be accessible from the internet. So it's going to take a minute or two for this service to deploy. We'll jump ahead until it's ready, and then we'll try it out. Okay, the service is up and running, and now we want to test it out. Now you'll notice that the URL that's been provided is demo.default.example.com. If I actually went to this URL, it would fail because I actually don't own the example.com domain, and thus the DNS record for this host would not point to my service. Typically what you would do is you would set up your own custom domains with SSL certificates and so forth, and then you'd set up DNS to point people who are going to a particular host to your service. For demo purposes, I haven't done any of that. What I'm going to do is I am simply going to look here and find the DNS name that corresponds to my Istio ingress gateway. Whenever somebody wants to talk to your service, they're going to go to your ingress gateway. The request is going to have a particular host header. So it'll say the host that it's trying to connect to, and then the gateway will forward requests with that host header to the service running on Cloud Run. So what I'm going to do is just copy this DNS name, which points to an Amazon Elastic load balancer. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to override the host header in my request. So I have a little utility that will do this, and you'll notice that I'm putting in a host header in my request that says this request is aimed at demo.default.example.com. So once I do that, if I hit enter, what should happen, if all goes well, is I should be able to talk to my Cloud Run service. And there you go. It's up and running. And so we have successfully deployed Cloud Run on Anthos and a Cloud Run service onto an Anthos cluster running in AWS. Now, obviously, there's a lot more that you can do, but I'll leave it to you to check that out on your own. Do me a favor, and if you like this video, click on the like button and share it with your friends and colleagues on social media. If you're interested in other videos that I've done or other technical videos from ROI Training, check out our channel, and you can subscribe to our channel to get notified of any new videos that we put out. Thanks very much.